Salve omnes, and welcome to this video lesson on Chapter 6 Grammar, Grammatica Latina. So first we're going to be looking at prepositions in this chapter, and then we're going to look at the new passive verb constructions. Okay, preposiciones, literally this sort of means like puttings in front of. Okay, pre means in front in Latin. It's where we get pre from, and positio is where we get position. It comes from pono, ponere, posui, positus, which is a verb that means to put or place. So prepositions in Latin and in English typically go in front of their objects. When we speak about the object of a preposition, for example, I could have a prepositional phrase like in the house or by the girl. In the house, we would have in for the preposition. The house would be the object of that preposition. By the girl, by would be the preposition. The girl would be the object of the preposition. Prepositional phrases are used usually to show some kind of adjectival or adverbial situation in a sentence. That is either to describe a noun or perhaps to describe the way in which something is happening or where it's happening or so on. All right. So, new prepositions we see in the margin. Let's look at this list. Ad, meaning to or towards. It also sometimes means at, meaning at the position of. Ante means before or in front of. Okay, so it can be before if we're speaking about time. Usually if we're talking about place, it means in front of. Post means after for time usually. And then behind is usually best for placement. Inter means between or among. Or if you want, you can say amongst or amidst, okay? And then prope is near, close to. Circum is around. Apud is with, or perhaps in the company of, at the house of. It shows close proximity to somebody or something. And then per means through or sometimes during. Now, one thing to note about all these new prepositions. We've seen some prepositions like in, ax, that's the word that means out of, or ob means from or by. Those prepositions take the ablative case. A couple more examples would be sine, without, and cum, which means with. So there are a good few prepositions that take the ablative case in Latin, but accusative is actually more common. More prepositions, probably maybe 2/3 of them, take the accusative case, right? So all of these prepositions, ad, ante, post, inter, prope, circum, apud, and per, will all take the accusative for the object of the preposition. That means if I want to say, to the villa, I'm going to say ad villam with the accusative ending. If I wanted to say in front of the children, I would say ante liberos with the accusative plural, right? So those endings that they show you in the chart on the side are just some example accusative endings, right? The is masculine singular, sometimes neuter singular. Is feminine singular. Os is masculine plural. Os is feminine plural accusative. The there is a neuter plural accusative. And then me and te are, of course, just those pronouns me and you in the accusative form as well. So those are just kind of to show you the kinds of things that you're going to likely see after these prepositions. Now, they've got lots of examples there. I don't think we need to go through all of those together, but just to point out some of the phrases that they have. Ad opidum, to the town. Ad ankylos, to the slave women. Ante eum, in front of him. Ante villam, in front of the villa. Post eum, after him. Post villam, behind the villa, we might say. Inter servos, between the slaves. Prope villam, near the villa. Prope eam, near her or near it. Circum mensam, around the table. Non apud dominum would be not with the master. Apud amicam suam would be with his girlfriend. And then the per ostium, for instance, would be through the door. Okay? So those are some examples there. Again, I don't think we need to go through all of them. Let's move on down to the new question words, which also have to do with placement, place towards, place away from, place where something is happening. So the question words, we had ubi previously. It means where, in the sense of where is something at. Quo and unde are new in this chapter. Quo means where to. The older English word for that is whither. So if you know that word whither, if you've read some Shakespeare or older English, you might have run into it. Whither means to where. And then unde means from where. The older English term for that is whence. Okay, so whence did he come means where did he come from. Whither is he going means where is he going to, right? So let's look at these words. So quo, where to, you've got to answer that with a place to which preposition. Now, the two prepositions that are most common for that are in, which could mean into or onto, and then od, which means to or towards. And then you just put the accusative case. Now, if you are dealing with a town, in Latin you don't actually need a preposition. You can just put the town's name in the accusative. So Romam and Tusculum are examples there. To Rome, to Tusculum. Unde, similarly, from where. When you answer that, if the answer is a town, again, you can just put it in the ablative case, because ablative is by, with, from, in, on, at. So from is one of your options there. So from where, unde, you could answer Roma, from Rome, or Tusculo, from Tusculum. If you're not specifically talking about a particular town, then you do want a preposition like ex, which means out of, or a or ob, which means away from. So you could say a villa, from the villa, or you could say ab opido, from the town. Because oppidum is not the name of a town, it is just the noun for town. So ab opido, from the town, ex villa, out of the villa, or sorry, a villa, you would use a there. Okay, then ubi. Ubi means where. Again, that's an old one. So if you have an ubi question, where is something, you could say in Roma, in Rome, or you could say in Tusculo, in Tusculum. But also in this chapter, they have the new locative case. So it looks like a genitive usually, or a dative perhaps. Romae and Tusculi are examples there. And you would translate those as at Rome, in Rome, and then at Tusculum, in Tusculum. All right, let us look on to the last bit of grammar for this chapter, which is passive verbs. Now, a lot of people get bogged down in passives. Passives do not have to be hard. Basically, you have normal action verbs, transitive verbs specifically, verbs that take a direct object, like, for example, give or see or hear, these kinds of verbs, can have an active form. For example, I hear you. Here is active because I am doing that action. And they can have a passive form. You are heard by me. Okay, so you are heard. The hearing happens to the subject, which is you there. So you're sort of passively sitting there and receiving it as a subject. One thing you'll notice when you're translating them in English is that you're going to have like an is or an are, or if it were past tense, you could say like was carried or something like that. But right now we're just dealing with present tense. So they have a couple examples here. Servus sacum portat, the slave carries the sack, that's active, the slave is doing it. Sacus portatur a servo, the sack is carried by the slave, so the action happens to the sack, right? The sack is carried, and then you want to say a servo. A here is going to translate to by, instead of the normal from. Their second example is in the plural. Servi sacos portant. The slaves carry the sacks. That's active. And then that is essentially the same thing as the passive sentence, saci portantur a servis. The sacks are carried by the slaves. So, in an active sentence, the subject does the action, and the verb has a direct object, which in Latin is going to be accusative case. Thus, in that first sentence, servus sacum portat, servus is nominative subject, sacum is the accusative direct object. In the second set, servi is the nominative plural subject, sacos is the accusative plural direct object, right? But then when you turn it into passive, what used to be the direct object, in the first sentence, sacum was the direct object, now turns into the subject, sakus, nominative, and then the verb changes to passive, portat goes to portatur, and then you have to say by whom it's done, and the by whom is what would have originally been the subject in the active sentence. So you say a servo, changing servus into the prepositional phrase. Similarly, in their second set of examples there, the servi subject turns into a servis, the prepositional phrase, by the slaves. Likewise, the accusative object of portant, which would be sakos, turns into the new subject, so it's a nominative plural, saki. And then the verb changes from the active to the passive, so we end up with portantur, the sacks are carried by the slaves. So they give you a lot of examples here, reminding you the different types of Latin verbs. First conjugation verbs have a, usually a long a. Second conjugation have the e vowel, usually a long e. And then third conjugation is the funny one that has changes in the vowel. Sometimes it's an I, like the iter ending. Sometimes it's a u, like the unter ending. Then finally, fourth conjugation has a long I, typically. So the iter and the unter. They give you some example sentences there. I don't think we need to go through all of those, but this is your first entry into passive. Hopefully it's starting to make some sense. We'll be doing it a lot more. Valete.